following subject matter is real and only intended for mature audiences. Discretion is advised.
People are dead after deputies say a man went on a shooting rampage.
I knew a week before she died I was going to kill her.
I can tell you the scene out there is absolutely horrific.
Nobody knows where this individual may strike next.
This is 10-Minute Murder.
Welcome to 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. I'm Joe, the host, and thank you for joining today. If you're connected with 10-Minute Murder on social media, you probably already knew what the episode today was going to be about because I posted a story about it, a little sneak preview. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about because you aren't following 10-Minute Murder on Facebook and Instagram, then I don't know what to say. I'm not going to point fingers and place blame because I'm on your side here, and I would follow you first if I could. But I can't. So the next best thing I can do is leave the links to where you can follow 10-Minute Murder on Facebook and Instagram in the show notes of this episode. Or you can just as easily go there and search for 10-Minute Murder and it'll pop right up. Also, a newer place to follow is on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, then you're already ahead of the game. But you can subscribe to 10-Minute Murder on YouTube now and you can watch the podcast. And it's exactly the same as the audio-only version, except on YouTube, the episodes are a day later. And on YouTube, you have to accidentally see me make faces about whatever it is that we're discussing. And I wish I could control my face, but I can't. It is what it is. And then you also have to see Harper roaming around the background and coming up and getting pets. But that's on YouTube only, and so you can go to YouTube and follow along there as well. Let's get to today's story. In the late 1970s, the residents of New York City were terrified. 6 people had been murdered and at least 7 injured along the way in seemingly random attacks during the summers of 1976 and 1977. Despite being at the center of the largest manhunt in New York history, the killer was presumptuous enough to send taunting and bizarre letters to the police and press, which he signed with the nickname Son of Sam. Eventually, after detailed witness statements, police arrested 24-year-old postal worker David Berkowitz, who confessed to all the murders. People were thrilled and assumed that the case was closed and the summer of fear had finally ended. But did Son of Sam really act alone? Richard David Falco was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1953 to Joseph Kleinman, who was a Long Island businessman, and Betty Falco, who was a waitress. And Betty was married before to a man named Tony Falco, and even though the relationship had ended after about 4 years, the two never divorced. And as you can guess, Joseph was not Betty's husband. He was actually married to another woman and made it very clear that he did not want to have anything to do with the baby. And so Betty listed Tony as the official father before giving just a few days old David up for adoption. He was soon adopted by a Jewish couple named Pearl and Nathan Berkowitz, who lived in the Bronx. David grew up to be a relatively smart child who had a dark and troubled side. He had more interest in things like larceny and casually starting fires than studying. And you would think that maybe that doesn't sound too bad. Many kids go through these phases, but in his diary, little David stated that he was actually responsible for starting 1,411 fires around New York City. And that's more of an obsession than anything else. Neighbors and relatives of the Berkowitz family later remembered David as a problematic, spoiled kid with a reputation as a bully. He was a loner, and David himself later stated that he felt, quote, different and less attractive than other teenagers and had difficulty socializing as he grew up as an only child, had no brothers or sisters to learn skills with. It's rarely a surprise in cases like this, but it's known that David suffered several head injuries during his childhood. One after being hit by a car, another a few months later when he ran into a wall, and as if that wasn't enough, David was again hit in the head with a pipe in 1961. David's obsession with mortality started, though, when he learned he was adopted, and his adoptive father Nathan told him that his biological mother had died during childbirth. And this was obviously a lie, and even though David's adoptive parents meant well, and he would meet his birth mother later in life, David stated, quote, Looking in retrospect, that characterized much of my life. I struggled with a lot of depression as a child and obsessions with death because I thought I deserved to die. During his childhood, David witnessed at least 3 fatal incidents, but the most tragic one was the death of his adoptive mother, Pearl, who died from breast cancer when David was 14 years old. After that, the tension in the family grew unbearable, especially since David and his new stepmother did not get along very well. Eventually, Richard and his second wife moved to Florida, and David left and joined the U.S. Army at age 17. He served for about 3 years and was honorably discharged. And upon his return, David located his birth mother, Betty, who gave him details of his birth and biological father. It's believed that the discovery of his adoption and the drama surrounding it shattered David's sense of identity. The crisis may have laid the psychological groundwork for what was about to come. Eventually, David returned to New York, where he settled into a small apartment in Yonkers and found a job as a letter sorter for the U.S. Postal Service. To the outside, it seemed like David was a loner that kept to himself, but inside, burning anger and delusion grew bigger and bigger. David became convinced that a black Labrador retriever named Harvey, who lived in the same apartment complex, was possessed by a demon and ordered him to do horrible things. By Christmas Eve 1975, David followed those orders. He stepped outside and began his rampage on some teenage girls, Jody Valenti and Donna Lauria, who were sitting inside Jody's car in front of Lauria's home in the Bronx. David shot them with his .44 caliber revolver, killing Lauria instantly, and Jody survived the injury. The seemingly random shooting earned little attention, but when David continued his spree after realizing he got away with the first attack, people started to notice a pattern. Over the next year, several couples were attacked, almost all sitting in their cars at night. 6 people were killed, and a lot more were injured. Most of the victims had the same profile, female with long, dark hair. Finally, when the police found out that the same .44 caliber gun had been used in all of the shootings, it confirmed that the attacks were not just random and were connected. Panic sparked throughout the community, and during his reign of terror, David left numerous letters near his victims' bodies, taunting the police and mocking them for not being able to catch him. In one of his letters, David wrote, quote, "I'm deeply hurt by your calling me a woman hater. I am not, but I am a monster. I am the son of Sam. When Father Sam gets drunk, he gets mean. Sam loves to drink blood. Go out and kill, commands Father Sam." It was no surprise that David's crimes received massive media attention, and psychiatrists thought the shooter might have paranoid schizophrenia. And we can all agree that these were not acts and words of a sane man. It was a most unexpected thing, though, that finally led to David's arrest: a parking ticket. Early on July 31st, 1977, David had killed Stacy Moskowitz and injured Robert Valenti in the neighborhood of Bath Beach. Just moments before, a local resident had seen him and paid attention to an important detail. The killer's car had received a parking ticket, and only a few tickets were given out that day, and one of them was for 24-year-old postal worker David Berkowitz. On August 10th, 1977, authorities arrived at David's apartment, and when they investigated his car parked on the street outside, police found a .44 caliber Bulldog pistol. When David emerged from the building, he was arrested immediately and said, quote, "Well, you got me. How come it took you such a long time?" During questioning, David claimed that he had been compelled by a demonic force that communicated its demands through his neighbor Sam Carr's dog. However, he later admitted that this was not true. Throughout his legal proceedings, David underwent numerous psychiatric exams, but was always found to be competent to stand trial. He pled guilty to the 6 killings, as well as nearly 1,500 fires he had set in and around New York City. On June 12, 1978, David was sentenced to 25 years to life for the killings. And David made the sentencing hearing even more dramatic as he attempted to jump out of a window on the 7th floor of the courtroom. He is currently in the correctional facility in Hudson Valley and has reportedly had an awakening while in prison, becoming a born-again Christian. He somehow even has his own website where he states, quote, "In 1976, David Berkowitz became known as the Son of Sam. In 1987, his life forever changed, and his friends know him now as Son of Hope." Since his new beginning, David said that he has no interest in pursuing parole. He prefers remaining in prison. So everybody should be happy, case closed, nothing to see here, right? Wrong. Journalist Maury Terry launched the theory that David did not actually act alone but had several accomplices, all part of a satanic cult. He was sure that David's neighbors, Sam Carr's two sons, John and Michael, who had previously been associated with David, worked together to carry out the murders with David, and that they had been part of the cult called the Children. Both John and Michael had also happened to die not long after David's arrest. Maury worked tirelessly to reopen the Son of Sam investigation, which eventually did happen by Yonkers police during 1996, but no new charges were filed. Because of the lack of any significant findings, the investigation was suspended, but remains unclosed. Maury Terry died December 10, 2015, after a brief illness, but his work still lives in his book, The Ultimate Evil, which was used as the basis for the Netflix documentary series, The Son of Sam, A Descent into Darkness. In the series, you can clearly see the immense toll that Maury's obsession with the case had taken on him as he went down the rabbit hole. Still, you're left with the question, what really happened? That's today's 10-minute murder, brief and bingeable true crime. Thanks for joining today, and if you are not subscribed, before the podcast ends, before this episode ends, make sure you do subscribe, whether you're listening on whatever podcast listening app that you're on right now, or if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss any episodes in the future. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that by email, 10minutemurder@gmail.com, or you can send me a direct message on Facebook or Instagram. The links for that are in the show notes of this episode, or you can just type 10-Minute Murder into Facebook or Instagram to the little search bar, and it'll pop right up. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Murder. Have a good night.